This is the story of Fritz Haber's invention and how a handful of chemical companies convinced the world that without their products, billions of people would starve. While those same companies posted record profits, poisoned drinking water for over 60 million Americans, and helped create a dead zone in the Gulf of Mexico, roughly the size of New Jersey. Depending on how you measure it, the synthetic fertilizer industry pulls in somewhere between $180 and $380 billion a year. And the men who built it, starting more than a century ago, had ties not just to farming but to chemical warfare and military explosives. Their message to the world was simple. We feed the planet, and without us, civilization collapses. The full story, though, runs a lot deeper than that sales pitch. So let's go back to where it all started. The man who changed everything twice. For most of human history, the nitrogen cycle set a hard ceiling on how much food the Earth could produce. Nitrogen is essential for plant growth, but atmospheric nitrogen is chemically inert, and only certain natural processes could convert it into a form crops could actually use. That ceiling kept population growth in check for millennia, until one German chemist cracked the code. Fritz Haber figured it out in 1909, synthesizing ammonia by pulling nitrogen straight out of the atmosphere and combining it with hydrogen. Carl Bosch, an engineer at BASF, then took Haber's lab demonstration and scaled it to industrial production by 1913. Together, what they created became known as the Haber-Bosch process, and it stands as one of the most consequential inventions in human history. More than 150 million metric tons of nitrogen fertilizer now flow from this single process every year, burning through roughly 3 to 5% of the world's natural gas supply. The NPK fertilizer you see on every bag at the garden center, that nitrogen component traces directly back to this process. And that's where the story turns dark, because the same synthetic ammonia that feeds crops converts just as easily into ammonium nitrate, which is the basis for military explosives. When a British naval blockade cut Germany off from imported nitrates during World War I, the Haber-Bosch process kept the German war machine producing gunpowder and ammunition, extending a war that might have ended years earlier. BASF, at the time operating under the industrial conglomerate IG Farben, became central to Germany's wartime chemical production, a corporate lineage that would extend its shadow well into the 20th century. Fritz Haber went further still. Known widely as the father of chemical warfare, he personally supervised the first large-scale poison gas attack at the Second Battle of Ypres on April 22, 1915, when his team released roughly 160 tons of chlorine gas from nearly 5,730 buried cylinders stretched across a 4-mile front. Nearly 70,000 Allied casualties came from that single battle. Clara Immerwahr, his first wife and one of Germany's first female PhD chemists, called his work, quote, a perversion of the ideals of science, and, quote, a sign of barbarity. Days after the Ypres attack, she died by suicide, and Haber left for the Eastern Front the very next morning to prepare another gas attack on Russian troops. None of that stopped the Nobel Committee. Haber won the prize in chemistry in 1918, and Bosch collected his in 1931. Chemical warfare and mass agricultural production trace back to the same invention, built by the same men. From bombs to farms. When World War II ended, the infrastructure that had churned out explosives and munitions didn't disappear. Those ammonia plants stayed open and pivoted to civilian fertilizer production, and the timing lined up with what became known as the Green Revolution. An American agronomist named Norman Borlaug had been working for the Rockefeller Foundation in Mexico since the 1940s, developing short-stemmed, disease-resistant, high-yield wheat varieties. The full NPK fertilizer package, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium, combined with new seeds and irrigation, that was the whole formula, and the results were staggering. Indian wheat yields more than doubled between 1967 and 1972, earning Borlaug the Nobel Peace Prize in 1970. USAID Administrator William Goud coined the term Green Revolution in a 1968 speech, and a global brand was born. Even Borlaug admitted limits, though. His own words were that the Green Revolution had not solved world hunger, it had merely bought us time. That admission matters because the fertilizer industry took his revolution and built a marketing narrative around it that persists to this day. If you're finding this useful, I'd appreciate it if you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel because it helps more people find videos like this one. The propaganda machine. Here's the core of what critics call the propaganda lie. Companies like Nutrien, Yara, Mosaic, CF Industries, and OCP Group have spent decades pushing a single message. Synthetic fertilizers are the only way to feed the world. Their trade group, the Fertilizer Institute, describes itself as the voice of the fertilizer industry and spent over $1.6 million lobbying in 2024 alone. That same organization also funds the Foundation for Agronomic Research, which pulled in more than $1.7 million from companies including Mosaic and CF Industries in 2019, a foundation funded almost entirely by fertilizer money. Academics at the University of Sydney's Post-Truth Initiative described it this way. Big agriculture frames market opportunities as moral imperatives, using the narrative to feed the world while making exorbitant profits at the expense of small-scale farmers and consumer health. UN Special Rapporteur on the Right to Food, Halal Elver, put it more bluntly, it is a myth. Using more pesticides has nothing to do with getting rid of hunger. According to the UNFAO, we are able to feed 9 billion people today. The problem is poverty, inequality, and distribution. About a third of all food grown globally goes uneaten, and the hunger problem has never been purely about production volume. As of 2024, according to the FAO, 673 million people still experience hunger worldwide, representing 8.2% of the global population, and that number persists after decades of massively increasing fertilizer use. Synthetic nitrogen fertilizer consumption has grown roughly 800% since the 1960s. The industry's central claim that more fertilizer equals less hunger collapses under its own timeline. The profit machine. Now let's follow the money because this is where it gets ugly. Back in 1980, 46 fertilizer firms operated in the United States. By 2019, that number had dropped to 13. 4 corporations alone, CF Industries, Nutrien, Koch, and Yara USA, controlled 75% of total domestic fertilizer production, and just 2 of them, Nutrien and Mosaic, supplied 85% of the North American potash market. When global fertilizer prices spiked during 2021 and 2022, driven partly by the Russia-Ukraine war and supply disruptions, these companies didn't just survive the crisis, they cashed in on it. Look at the numbers. Nutrien posted net earnings of $7.7 billion in 2022, up from $459 million in 2020, which works out to a roughly 1,575% increase. CF Industries earned $3.2 billion, a 955% jump from 2020, and Mosaic brought in $3.6 billion, up 438%. Added all together, and Nutrien, Mosaic, CF, Koch, and Yara posted combined record profits exceeding $18 billion in 2022 alone. And here's what makes those numbers harder to excuse. Nutrien's cost of goods sold rose 24% that year, but profits climbed 142%. CF Industries saw costs rise 28%, while profits surged 212%. These weren't companies scraping by under rising costs. They were charging well beyond what the market required, and Farm Action told the USDA that these corporations used the cover of consecutive global crises to raise prices far beyond those demanded by necessity. By January of 2026, USDA Deputy Secretary Stephen Vaden called Nutrien and Mosaic a duopoly, saying it should have never been allowed to happen in the first place, that 2 companies could so constrain the supply that they gained pricing power over American farmers. The environmental cost. While these companies stacked record profits, the environmental damage kept compounding. Agricultural runoff, nitrogen and phosphorus from over-application across 31 states in the Mississippi River Basin feeds into a process called eutrophication, where excess nutrients trigger explosive algae growth that depletes oxygen in the water and creates what scientists call a hypoxic zone. The result is the Gulf of Mexico dead zone, which measured 6,705 square miles in 2024 according to NOAA. That reading ranked as the 12th largest in 38 years of measurement. Between 1960 and 1980, U.S. farm fertilizer use tripled, and nitrogen loading into the Gulf has not decreased since the adoption of the Hypoxia Action Plan back in 2001. A 2022 study published in Nature Scientific Reports calculated that the synthetic nitrogen fertilizer supply chain produced an estimated 2.1% of all global greenhouse gas emissions in 2018, exceeding the output of commercial aviation that same year. Only about 30 to 40% of applied nitrogen actually gets absorbed by plants, and the rest leaks back into the water and air, completing a nitrogen cycle that has been thrown badly out of balance by industrial agriculture. What that runoff does to drinking water tells an even grimmer story. Nitrate contamination is now one of the most widespread water quality problems in the country. The EPA's legal limit for nitrate sits at 10 milligrams per liter, a standard established in 1962 and never updated since, and never revisited under the Clean Water Act's framework for agricultural pollutants. Peer-reviewed research from the Environmental Working Group, published in Environmental Research, found that a health-based limit for colorectal cancer risk should land around 0.14 milligrams per liter, roughly 70 times lower than the current legal threshold, and estimated between 2,300 and 12,594 U.S. cancer cases per year tied to nitrate contamination in drinking water. Over 60 million Americans now rely on water systems with elevated nitrate levels as of 2026. The explosive side of this compound has left its own trail of destruction. On August 4th of 2020, roughly 2,750 tons of improperly stored ammonium nitrate detonated in Beirut, killing at least 218 people, injuring over 7,000, and causing an estimated $15 billion in property damage. 7 years earlier, on April 17th of 2013, about 30 tons of fertilizer-grade ammonium nitrate blew up at a plant in West Texas, killing 15 people, including 12 emergency responders, and flattening more than 120 buildings, all just 550 feet from the nearest school. The same compound that grows food has repeatedly killed people in catastrophic quantities. So what's the alternative? This is where the conversation gets complicated, and being honest about what the research shows matters more than picking a side. Organic farming does produce lower yields. A UC Berkeley analysis covering 115 studies found organic yields running about 19% lower overall. But that gap shrank to just 8 to 9% when farmers used multi-cropping and crop rotation. The Rodale Institute's Farming Systems Trial, the longest-running side-by-side comparison in the U.S. going back to 1981, found that organic yields matched conventional in normal years and ran 30 to 31% higher during drought years, all while using 33% less fossil fuel energy. But a 2025 peer-reviewed study complicated those findings, showing that Rodale's soil carbon advantages traced largely to manure inputs and didn't hold up as statistically robust on an equivalent soil mass basis. Real science backs both directions here, and the picture looks more tangled than either camp typically admits. Sri Lanka offered a cautionary lesson in speed. President Rajapaksa banned agrochemical imports overnight in April of 2021, rice harvest dropped 32%, tea production fell 18%, and the government fully reversed the ban by November of that same year. A 2024 study found that even a gradual transition faced a hard constraint on nutrient supply, because municipal compost could offset only about 10% of mineral fertilizer. An honest read of the evidence says synthetic fertilizer isn't disappearing tomorrow, considering roughly half the world's population eats food grown with it. But the industry's insistence that no other path exists, that poisoned water, dead zones, and monopoly pricing are simply the cost of eating, that part is the lie. Let's close where we opened. This industry was born from the same chemistry that produced poison gas in the trenches of World War I, and it scaled up on infrastructure originally built for World War II munitions, much of it flowing through corporate structures tied to IG Farben and BASF. The Green Revolution gave it a moral cover story, a promise to end hunger that, by the industry's own timeline, has never been kept. 673 million people still go hungry. A shrinking number of companies have consolidated control over the market, posted billions in record profits during global crises, and left American taxpayers dealing with nitrate contamination in drinking water, degraded soil, and a dead zone growing through eutrophication that keeps expanding. Vaclav Smil, a widely respected scholar of energy and agriculture, estimated that without the Haber-Bosch process, about 2/5 of the world's population wouldn't exist today. That may be accurate, But recognizing the importance of an invention and accepting an industry's propaganda about being the only solution are two different things, especially when that industry has been caught charging farmers well beyond what costs justify, lobbying against regulation, and bankrolling its own research to reinforce its own narrative. The fertilizer industry didn't just feed the world, it fed us a story, and it's time we examine the full picture. If this video gave you something to think about, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment letting me know which part surprised you the most. I read every single one.